Okay, welcome back. It's so nice to have you here. Welcome to episode 4 of LIFICAST. It is the official podcast partner of the Leeds International Festival of Ideas, where each episode we will take one of the big questions that the festival is looking at and explore it ourselves. So today we are asking the question, green or growth? It's impossible not to notice our impact on the environment at the moment, from wildfires in Greece to floods in Hebden Bridge. We can no longer hide or ignore the consequences of our unfettered growth and consumption of Earth's resources. So what can we do about it if we want to continue to expand and grow and evolve? A few people will have some interesting ideas on this. Join us on the programme right now. Dr. Jim McQuaid is here. Dr. McQuaid, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tammy Baxter is here as well. Tammy, hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
And Ben Wright is here as well. Ben, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let's go around the table and just give a bit more of an expansive explanation of who we are. Ben, take it away.
Sure, thank you. So I'm Ben Wright, Solutions Manager for a company called Simply Video here in Leeds. We specialise in the world of wearable devices and looking to help organisations globally to reduce their carbon footprint. You can also look at return on investment from other perspectives as well by replacing people on the ground. So ultimately you can join from anywhere on any device and see what's going on, fix problems live in the moment without having to jump in and send someone all the way around the globe to fix something.
Great stuff.
Okay, I'm Jim McQuaid. I'm an atmospherical climate scientist at the University of Leeds. I do most of my work is actually field work, so I'm recently back from Greenland, where we've been looking at the increasing melt rate of the ice sheet itself, and we experienced some of the rain that's been in the news recently. I can tell you, being on an ice sheet when it's raining is not much fun. So, but it's a beautiful place when it is there.
Yeah.
So, but I study many aspects of the atmosphere and the climate, basically making measurements both at the surface, and also I've done a lot of work with the UK's research aircraft, which allows us to go anywhere in the atmosphere and just about anywhere in the world to make our measurements.
How exciting, lots to talk about. Then Jim and Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Baxter. I'm the Deputy Hub Manager at Oxfam's online shop based in Batley, in the Waste Saver Textile Recycle Centre for Oxfam, where all the donations from all over the UK come to.
Great stuff. So we have a really broad range of experience on the panel, so there's loads to talk about here. Let's dive straight in with you, Jim, if that's okay. Probably the biggest headline of recent times has been from the UN, talking about a code red for humanity in terms of climate change. Where are we at the moment, and just how bad is it?
Well, for a long time we've been looking at this, and people have been saying that the climate is making a big difference, but because there's a difference between climate and weather, there's natural variability in the weather, and we see that all the time. So the thing that's been holding us back is having enough confidence to attribute the extreme weather patterns, weather events that we're having to climate change, and now we're confident, and we could that's being published now because we just had the IPCC's 6th report. And that gathers information. It's you can think of it a bit like SAGE, where SAGE gathers information from lots of people all around the world, and the IPCC is the same. So it reads all the papers. So they read something like approaching 15,000 peer-reviewed articles about all the different aspects of climate, and they do a compendium. They gather all this information together, and they try and make it simpler and more concise for people to take in, because ultimately this is the sort of information that goes to COP26 to inform the governments, the prime ministers, the presidents, the royal families, the people who actually will make a lot of the decisions, so that people sit up and start listening to them. So, and this is it's now we can say, because it's very difficult, because weather is so variable, to actually tie these extreme weather events, and we get used to using the term unprecedented. Unprecedented you should use very occasionally, but now it's unprecedented, and another unprecedented weather event. The flooding in New York today, in the last 24 hours, was a 1 in 500 year storm, but event. But we had Hurricane Andrew. and a number of other ones that have gone up there, and they've been unprecedented as well. And we use it in the UK, unprecedented. So what was unprecedented 10 years ago is getting more normal. So what was a 1 in 100 year storm is now a 1 in a 10 year storm. Those sorts of things. So if you talk to the meteorologists and things like that. So, but across the scientific community, across the planet, just about everybody is in agreement. There's always some people in the same way that some people think the Earth is flat, or we didn't go to the moon, and those sorts of things. And that challenges us to prove it. So you have to be able to say, we are 100% or 99.99% proof happy that this is actually happening.
There are some scary stats, and scaring people probably isn't the right way to try and convince them, but there's certainly eye-opening stats that came from that. The past 5 years have been the hottest on record since 1850. The recent rate of sea level rises is nearly tripled compared with the beginning of the 1900s. I guess the thing is that I think, and when Jim talks about unprecedented, Ben, for instance, is that does the message cut through because we have heard about it for so long? The government and every other government in the world signed up to the Paris Climate Accord that would try and limit the increase of temperatures to below 2 degrees by the end of the century. We've known it for years, but I just wonder, have we heard so much about it that it doesn't make enough noise anymore?
I mean, that's an amazing question. I don't think we've heard enough about it. I think that we've heard an awful lot of polarized thoughts around whether or not it exists or whether or not it is indeed a myth, but the reality of the situation is that it's getting worse and worse every day. And from our perspective, I think, are we hearing enough about climate change? Well, it's in the news every day. It seems to be a lot of doom and gloom, but are we hearing the right messages about climate change? Are we hearing the sort of messages that might resonate with my demographic? Can we actually therefore influence people with the way in which we're communicating better? So I don't think we're hearing enough about it, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't think that there is enough discussion around climate change. And I think that what could be done is, in a sense, allowing the difficult situation that we're in to be broken down to more of a layman's perspective. What can we do on a daily basis? How far is this going to go unless we act now? And what can we do to halt it? So I think we need to hear more. Yeah,
and Tammy, whose job is it to try and deal with it? I was reading a YouGov poll this morning, actually, that most people felt it was the government or large organisations like the UN whose job it is to deal with it. Do people feel like, do you think they're just too powerless as an individual to do something about it?
I think that's a possibility. Obviously, it's everyone's responsibility. We all live on the earth, we're all damaging the earth. It's all our responsibility to save the earth. Yes, it's the government's responsibility, but we can all do our own little bits as well. So, for example, the textile industry accounts for 10% of the world's greenhouse gases, which is a massive percent in regards to other industries. If we doubled the amount of times we wear our clothes, that would bring down greenhouse gases by about 44% on average, which is massive. So those are little things that we could do ourselves. I think, as you were saying, I agree, we don't hear enough about it. When you think about, for example, when we found out how bad tobacco was for us, and they decided to start putting pictures on packaging and things like that, reminding us of how bad smoking is for you. We're not seeing that kind of thing in regards to other things that are damaging the planet. And should those kind of things be a reminder as well, is what I wonder.
So it needs to be more in our face.
Yeah, that's what I think.
The point of this is to discuss many things, but green or growth, Jim, and this idea, I guess, of decoupling is something that you hear a lot about. Can you grow but detach yourself from the amount of CO2 that this country provides? It proves that it can be done, because the UK has grown in terms of its GDP, the amount of money it makes, by 70% since 1985, and it's reduced its CO2 by 34%. So the two aren't necessarily inextricably linked, but I wonder if there needs to be more on a greater level than the individual to make sure that accelerates. Is the government, for instance, doing enough? Is the UN incentivising us enough to make that change as a nation?
Well, there's a lot of talk about it. I mean, obviously, it's all been masked by the pandemic, so everything's been focused on that. And as we move away from out of the pandemic, the impact of COVID, the climate will still be there. And this is one of the things we have to keep reminding of. And you say that it's is it whose responsibility of it? And to a certain extent, certainly we have the Priestley Centre at the university, and a lot of the focus is on us as scientists talking to people in a language, make it accessible.
Which is exactly what Ben was saying.
So that's it. It's I think so. It's not just governments. It's not just the politicians or the UN. It's everybody. And certainly there's a big push from the across the scientific community, not just in Leeds, but across the UK, across the globe, to communicate to people, because people, if you look on they regularly do who's the most believed people, and it's probably changed quite a lot. But politicians and estate agents and things like that, they tend to stay down the bottom. There, bless them. And it's doctors and it's scientists, and those are the people. So. The general population, sort of, there are outliers in everything, but I think it's important that we, the scientific community, talk to people, and there are extremes. So one important message to get across is that it's not, we're not at the point of extinction. We can see it. It's off in the distance, but it's now, because if you think about all is lost, people will just stop.
Yeah,
and now's the time. We really need to grasp the metal and do something about it. And things like, we're, this is the festival in Leeds. We're in Yorkshire, and one of the messages when I go and talk to, and it's schools, community groups, things like that. It's what can I do? They all, what can I do? And actually. It may be a bit of a get out, but I would say, well, we're in Yorkshire, don't waste stuff. The amount of food that's thrown away, that's bought and then just chucked. Clothes, just keep wearing them. Don't, and a lot of people like fast fashion, and this is one problem for trying to tackle climate. It's you're being a killjoy because you're saying, go on less holidays, buy less stuff. And just be a little bit more Yorkshire in the way you are. So, and as we said earlier, I'm a very fine example of that. So, this is the one of the things we can do something about. It's not just about the politicians, and ultimately politicians. We elect the politicians. Yeah. So at some point they do start listening.
Yeah, you get the politicians you deserve.
Yeah. But it's so it's. I think it's across the spectrum. Everybody needs to be talking about it, and in a language that people can understand. It's not, we're not trying to make stuff sound like it's too complicated.
Yeah.
You take it down to a level where you can talk to someone. I say to the students, what you need to do is be able to, someone goes, oh, you do that climate stuff, and they're sat on the bus, and you explain it to them then, and they go, oh right, okay. So it's at that level. It's not. We're not communicating with. We're used to communicating with other scientists who understand it. It's not the other scientists. It's the people in the street. It's your uncle. It's your nan or whoever. These sorts of things. So they start to understand it. When I was growing up, all the light switches always says we're saving energy and told people to turn the lights off. And we were taught it at school. So you went home and you turned the lights off. Yeah. Because you were taught it. And when kids come home from school and they start to explain to their parents, this is, it's sort of the Greta effect. Yeah. It's when the youngsters who are going to inherit the earth, inherit what we're leaving behind for them, when they start to get concerned about it, then parents start thinking, oh, maybe, they do start to take a lot of notice. So it's just to come back, it's not just governments, it's not just the United Nations, they're the leaders and they control the money, but it's everybody.
I'm waiting for the next UN report that simply says Be More Yorkshire. That's the answer. You might have noticed a small bingo machine in the middle of the table here. This is a no expense spent random question generator for the Leeds International Festival of Ideas. So one of you feel free to spin it. Ben, you get on that and bring a ball out, so to speak. Correlates to a question that I will ask you. Everybody else can chip in as well. Lovely stuff. Well done. What's the number?
So I have, I believe it's 4.
Number 4, okay. What is your most environmentally unfriendly activity or behaviour? What do you do that's not great for the environment? Because none of us can claim to be perfect in this.
So I feel like I can answer that quite quickly. I'm a little concerned that Jim might put me down and say, oh, actually, I think you might have something more. But I think probably driving a car.
Okay, yeah, I would say that's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah. Do you drive it unnecessarily? Do you find yourself thinking, I could walk or get the bus to this destination?
Yes, and that is something that eats away when you are driving to that destination and you know that you've done the wrong thing and then you've got to drive back from the destination as well. I think there's certainly issues with driving too regularly, but the commute as well. I live out of town, so it's a 30-mile round trip every day. Are there other ways that I could get to and from work? Possibly. Mm-hmm. Are they as readily available and as convenient as driving? No. But they are available.
Your experience reflects a lot of people. Fossil fuels still the primary source of energy, and that includes fuel in homes and cars, etc. in the UK. Nearly 80%. Has dropped from 97% in 1965. So we're making big headway in this. But I think, Tammy, it's a really interesting perspective that actually we all know we could do something different, but there are always reasons or excuses that we don't. And I just wonder if we will get to a point where actually we will all accept that we can make changes, but we're not doing enough to make those changes. What will make us make those easy changes?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more aware of the little changes that you could do. So, for example, how you were saying about you don't want to be the killjoy saying, oh, don't buy more things and that kind of stuff, consumerism. But buying things secondhand, you're at least continuing to wear clothes more than once. You're reusing those clothes and it's bringing down the consumerism of making more clothes. And making sure that less things actually go to landfill.
How do we change that consumer culture, though? I mean, for most people, looking on Instagram, for instance, makes you feel quite inadequate. I don't know if I'm speaking for everybody else here. And there is definitely a generation or a group of people who are buying dresses, who are buying jeans, who are buying shirts or whatever just to look good on Instagram. It's easy to get those dresses for a £5 from a well-known online shop. And I just wonder, though, how we try and change that behaviour that is so endemic now. We are compelled to just buy stuff, aren't we, because we're in that culture where we can.
Yeah, well, for me, with Instagram, so I found myself not really liking what I saw on Instagram. But the great thing with social media is the algorithms. So in one part, they're annoying, but in another part, once you start following all the right people, so following people that are buying second-hand clothes and are reusing things and are sustainable, then you get to see more and more of that, and it influences you more to try and be more sustainable yourself, and it gives you more tips on how to be sustainable, like buying second-hand clothes, re-wearing clothes, fixing clothes. Like when I was younger, we'd fix things. If something's got a hole in it, we'd sew it back up again. Try and reuse rather than just buying new, and that kind of culture's kind of gone out the window a little bit. But we're seeing it slowly come back. So we've got some wonderful volunteer students at the moment that take the time to, when donated garments come into us, so for example a cashmere jumper that's got a few holes in, and rather than throwing it out and rejecting it, they're taking the time to sew up those holes, so maybe making like patches on elbows and that kind of thing, and it's just giving that item a second chance to be sold and worn by someone else, rather than ending up in landfill or with us going through a different way, because no donated item to Oxfam goes to landfill.
Yeah, not a single bit of it.
No textiles, no.
So it can end up in mattresses and car doors and all sorts of places.
So the point of Waste Saver is to make sure that no textile item goes to landfill. So first thing, it'll be sorted, and if it can be sold on, then it'll be sold on in either the online shop, a high street store, a festival shop. You could find something at Glastonbury. If it's not saleable, then it would be sorted into a fabric component and can be sold on to be used as mattress filling, car insulation, all that kind of cool stuff. And if it's still not saleable, so as you find with a lot of fast fashion, there's a lot of synthetic fibres, a lot of blends, and we're unable to do anything with that. So they're then incinerated and used to fuel houses in Kirklees.
Wow, that's amazing.
So nothing goes to landfill.
Yeah, that's very impressive. Let's talk about business, Ben. In 2018, the commercial sector was responsible for 18% of CO2 emissions. So business is bad for the environment. I'm not blaming it all on you, obviously.
Thanks.
How much of the environment is a factor when you consider your growth? Because your point as a business is to get bigger, right?
Yeah, for sure.
How much do you think about your impact on the environment when you're doing that?
Again, I think that's a really good question. So our business, to give just a bit of insight, is a startup. We work in the world of video.
In fact, you've got an example.
I do.
Get your kit
I'll
out
show you
so
the
we
little
can see
gadget,
it.
the little RoboCop device.
Talk us through it.
I
what
will.
it is.
So this device that I've got right now is by a company called Realware. There are other devices available on the market for those who refer with BBC. This device here is quite literally a wearable. So you pop this on top of your head with a nice 1980s work band over the top.
Yeah.
You've got a camera on the side of your head.
Yeah.
And this boom arm that comes from the front, which has a tiny, tiny little screen right at the front here. And that has magnifying lenses in it. So what I have just under my line of sight is the equivalent of a 7-inch tablet. Now what this means is that I can go onto like a work site, for example, and if I don't know how to fix something, maybe Tammy does. So I give Tammy an email, could you jump on this call? I come in wearing my wearable on our platform, and you can see exactly what I'm seeing. It's got microphones built in over here, which are noise cancelling, so in those windy environments you'll still just capture the voice, and it's got speakers as well. So Tammy could be seeing quite literally exactly what I see from the camera and going, hey Ben, what you need to do is you just need to flick that knob there, push that button, and everything should come back to life. Now, where I feel that...
Have a look.
Yeah, of course, please do. It's really durable, so don't worry about breaking it.
As a challenge for me.
Challenge accepted. They are used in really rugged environments. So what this is looking to do, and I guess where we come into it from an environmental perspective, is that there are pledges, there are businesses out there that are driving towards that net zero. When that will come to fruition, who knows, but there are targets. And how can we do that? Well, one of the things, the example I gave just then of me being someone who's not qualified and Tammy being a professional, maybe 3,000 miles away, we could save that entire journey across the Atlantic. Let's say I'm in New York, you're in Leeds. You could save that entire journey of you flying across, 2 days of jet lag, all of the carbon that's associated with it, and within no time at all we can fix that problem. So it's great in terms of efficiency. Mm-hmm. It's also great in terms of reducing that carbon footprint. And if you do that at scale, you're not just reducing the carbon footprint from a small perspective, it's actually really significant. I believe that a return journey across the Atlantic is around 2 tons of CO2, which is a phenomenally large amount. So if you're cutting that every single time, and someone is literally just wearing a headset in 1080p, you're seeing exactly what they're doing in real time, fantastic. You are helping in terms of that carbon reduction, but also in terms of your business, because now all of a sudden that problem that would have taken 6 days to fix has now been fixed in 1 minute.
Yeah, it's a fascinating bit. It is. I mean, it's kind of almost cliched how much it looks like it's something out of a sci-fi film.
RoboCop.
Yeah,
there you go.
1980 headband across the top, and your camera on the side, and your kind of Madonna, Britney Spears, which looks like a mouthpiece, but it's actually a camera. This isn't just about what you do as a business to change the world, but obviously you've also signed up to. There are various pledges that businesses can sign up to in terms of your own carbon emissions and trying to stay green as well.
Absolutely. One that we've signed up to, I believe we've just actually had a sign off on today, is Tech Zero. Now I don't know a huge amount around that particular initiative, but certainly it's to drive carbon zero by 2030. And as part of that pledge, it's actually about what you supply to your customers. So if, say, for example, I was supplying a car, then that's going to have quite a large carbon output. But we're supplying these headsets, which, yes, through manufacturing will naturally have some form of emission. But once the asset, someone has hold of it, it can be used over and over again. I'm not going to say it's renewable or sustainable. It's not. Tech obviously evolves. But what you are reducing is that need for travel. And when you look at in terms of emissions, I guess, some of the smallest amount of, sorry, my apologies. If you look at emissions in terms of flight, 2.5%, I believe, of global emissions come through flight. So if you can, again, reduce that, you're doing something better. If you can reduce that on the textile side, even better. So again, if every business can make these conscious small changes, and this one here is quite literally not just making a conscious change to solve one problem, but solve many at the same time, become innovative, think of new ways to reduce your carbon footprint. And many enterprises out there have signed up to these pledges as well. So they have to hit those targets. Yeah. If we can help them along the way by supplying our technology, then fantastic. And that's what we're driving forwards with. We work with some of the biggest renewable businesses in the world. And we will also work with some of the most damaging businesses in the world in terms of the environment. But as they transition away from traditional fossil fuels to more renewable.
Fossil fuels is an interesting one, Jim, because we just said we still rely on them. I think a lot of people think about coal, for instance, and how here in Britain we are kind of virtually almost stopping using coal. But the reality is fossil fuels are also coming from gas and oil as well. You mentioned China earlier. Its output is huge when it comes to fossil fuels because as a growing economy, that's its primary source of energy. So with everything we can try and do of not buying clothes and of having these great technological advances that mean we don't have to fly, if you have a nation like China or India or America, does any of that matter that we do our bit when they are hugely polluting the world?
Well, I mean, we've got to continually have this conversation with them, and people say, yeah, but the UK compared to China is, a drop in the ocean. I mean, we've actually moved, transported, exported a lot of our emissions. Our CO2, one thing that's driven down our CO2 emissions in this country is basically we're getting China to make everything for us. Yeah. So they make it for us, so we don't produce the emissions, it comes over in a ship. So, but we do tout ourselves as being global leaders, and we do have a responsibility. We invented the Industrial Revolution. We've been producing carbon dioxide for a much longer time than China, even though we are smaller. But
it was just this year that China overtook Germany as the place we import the most goods from. So it's, as much as we might say we're doing wonderful work in reducing our net footprint, we're just offsetting it.
We're just moving it, so we can't see
it. Looks good.
It's out of sight. It doesn't matter, and it allows people to buy more and more stuff. I mean, there's a problem at the moment because there's not enough empty containers. They're all in the wrong place. So there is a slowdown in goods coming over, particularly talking about Christmas. But yeah, I mean, we can't. China is doing what we did, 2 centuries ago. They're developing, so you can't really hold that against any of these countries. But they are engaging it. China is the biggest manufacturer of solar panels in the world. Right. They may be a big polluter, but they are aware of this, and they're trying to. They are making some efforts, and we can't. It's not a battle. This is, it's not about. No one's going to win it if we take it on as a battle. So we have to work together.
I think there's also that notion of holding yourself to a higher moral account. So as much as you say, well, they're doing it, well, that's fine, but you have to show that it can be done. Exactly what you were talking about there. It's not an excuse just to say we won't bother because nobody else is doing anything.
I mean, you can say that in traffic. The traffic was terrible this morning. Yeah. But if you're in a car, you are the traffic. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
people go, roads are shocking.
It's like when you go on holiday, too many tourists, they ruined it for me. You are a tourist.
I went to the airport, it was stuffed full of people. And it's like, well, I'm sure people were thinking about that when they saw you.
Come on, Tammy, let's have a random question from you. Give it a 12. No, it's all right. You can break it, that's fine. What's the number?
Number 10.
Number 10.
Who's reading that out? Who's that gonna come
Number
to?
10, here we go. It's a bit of it's a big one, but do people care enough? It kind of comes back to, I guess, that point of we hear a lot about it. Does it become white noise? Do people genuinely care, do you think, about our impact on the environment?
I would say yes. So Oxfam have been doing Secondhand September for the past 3 years now. This is our 3rd year running it. We are now in Secondhand September. And last year, around 50,000 people got involved.
That's great.
So that's amazing.
What is it? So you only buy secondhand clothes, or you're giving away clothes?
Yes, so Secondhand September is a challenge that Oxfam started 3 years ago, where we are challenging people to only buy secondhand for 30 days or more, so through the whole of September basically. This year we're also asking people to donate as well, so not only we're asking people to stop buying new and only buy secondhand for 30 days, but also donate their clothes to Oxfam. So if you're having a clear out or something like that, send them over to Oxfam and make sure that they're not being not ending up in landfill, as 13 million items of clothing end up in landfill every year.
Really?
So that's a massive amount. Oxfam, in Waste Saver, we save around 14,000 tonnes a year. So that's a big amount that we're trying to save, stop from going to landfill. So we're asking more people to donate to Oxfam, and we can make sure that those numbers go down even more.
That's a huge amount, 14,000. I think 60% of our clothes are made from polyester and man-made fibres as well. So that's just not going anywhere. It's not like it's cotton, it's just going to fade away.
Polyester produces twice as much CO2 to produce as cotton.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's another thing. Polyester is a fossil fuel.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. But, at least we grow cotton.
Yeah, yeah.
And in doing so, it sucks carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
I'm interested in your actual experience of being out on the ice caps and elsewhere. We are seeing increasingly closer to home, whether it is monsoons or typhoons in America and Bangladesh, and as we said, Hebden Bridge flooding sadly regularly, and incredibly hot summers. What's it like out in the field where you are, Jim, and over your career? Have you noticed the difference?
We're seeing, we're going, when you plan a field work, you pick a location where you think what you want to measure is most likely to happen, and then we had 3 days of rain, and that really is pretty unprecedented. And what it does is it melts the ice sheet. It actually speeds up the melting because it's just water falling on the ice, and then it changes the surface, and then the surface because the surface is quite complicated. We think about you think the ice sheet was nice, pristine, white ice, but it's anything but, because there's a lot of black carbon soot blows through the atmosphere. There's a lot of dust, but also our specific project is looking at there's biology growing on the surface, and that has a seasonal cycle, and we don't know the impact of that on the melt and how much a proportion of it is. So to make our climate models better, and that's what we're always trying to make things better, reduce the uncertainty. So we're studying this so we can actually include those in the climate models. But if you look at a very basic way of looking at it, is look where the government funded research is going, and there's more and more money going into climate research, because it's becoming more and more important, and it's a more complicated question. So it's quite amazing that when you see these numbers about how much ice is turning into water, and the impact of it. So it makes, if you get water underneath the glacier, and it means the glass is slightly lubricated, so it moves quicker, and if it moves quicker, it drags the ice sheet down. So it's this runaway. So there's all these feedbacks. So they all, as soon as one thing starts to happen, it's always a downward spiral in these. And recently, about 3 weeks ago, it rained on the top of Greenland. Now the top of Greenland's the ice sheet's a dome. The top of Greenland is 3,500 meters, or over 10,000 feet in old money, and it rained on the top. And that's possibly the first time it's been recorded.
And why should we worry about that? What is the consequence of the rain and the ice cap eventually.
It's just showing that, you know,
melting.
it's back to the unprecedented things. These things are happening more and more often. It's like, no, you know, it doesn't rain on top of it. I mean, 3,500 metres, if you know, that's generally snow, even in the UK.
Yeah, that's 3.5 times the height of Scarfell.
Yeah, I mean, that's the highest, the top of the highest ski runs in the Alps, you know, and it doesn't, you know, it should snow.
Yeah.
It really should snow there. You know, you see pictures of it. It is pretty pristine white up there. But you know, these things are just like, why is it happening? And it never used to happen. So we do, you know, you do field work and you can make lots of fancy measurements and things like that. But quite often the thing to do is go and talk to the people who live there, and they say, you know, about 20 years ago I went to Namibia. And there were locals saying it was the coldest it's ever been. You know, and these are 40, 50-year-old blokes who work at the airport. You know, so if you use them as a measurement, it's like, it's never been this cold.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds like that's an impact of extreme, you know, changing weather patterns. It's not showing that the Namibia is cooling down, far from it. But it's shown the weather's changing, these extreme events. So to talk to the locals, and you know, they talk about, the monsoon. You know, you go to Africa, and the monsoon's 3 weeks earlier than it used to be. You know, they used to be able to like set the calendar by it, and it's all changing. You know, and in the UK, you know, when the first, you know, bluebells come out, snowdrops, those sorts of things, and they're all, you know, every year. You know, listen to the radio, and there's a study of phenology, which is the study of the seasons, and these things are just happening earlier and earlier. You know, first cuckoos, or when the harvest is happening. Talk to the farmers. Yeah. You know, all these people who've been out there experiencing it. They're not climate scientists, they're not atmospheric scientists, environmental scientists. They're just people doing their job, but they're doing it outside. So they're just taking in this data, just information. Yeah. And they go, it never used to flood in the top field. It makes no sense. Yeah. You know, all those sorts of things.
I wanted to finish by talking about when actions actually match words and vice versa. Ben, I'm not sure if you know about Leeds Bradford Airport's expansion. It's been referred to the government, but Leeds Bradford is looking to expand itself, double the amount of passengers that fly into it from 4 million to 7 million in 2030. A lot of people surprised that would even be considered at a time like this. And I just wonder your thoughts on when you see people in positions of power making decisions like expanding an airport at a time when we're talking about a climate crisis.
What are my opinions on that? My personal opinions on that are that it's poor decision making, and there could be, you know, we're here. We've been talking about innovation, for example. We're talking about technology, which is just my selfish side of what I do on a day-to-day basis. But surely if we're working in such innovative ways, and you know, the pandemic has sped that up, if anything, then it should be leading us to think about more innovative ways that we could get around. You know, could we look to reduce the dependency on air travel? Now, Leeds Bradford Airport is a relatively small airport. Leeds is a very large city. Is there an argument to say that there should be an expansion versus other cities? Maybe, but my personal opinion on it is that we need to start thinking of new ways to travel. If it's coming into the country, you know, the tourism sector is absolutely massive when people will need to continue travelling. But in terms of encouraging the wrong behaviours, and I think this is what it comes down to, you mentioned incentivising earlier on, we're almost incentivising the wrong behaviours. By looking to grow an airport, we are not really taking full attention of the fact that by growing an airport, we're going to be bringing in these jets that pump out more CO2 than any car you'll ever drive ever. And so we are not incentivising the companies such as, well, I won't mention names, but you know, the air companies, for example, to change their habits to, people need to get around. Are there other new ways of transportation? Could we look at more innovative ways to transport people around? Could we look at public transport even to an extent? Personally, I think that the expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport is a terrible idea, although I do understand the necessity in terms of growth. And that's, I guess, where the point of the conversation comes in.
The argument is it's going to provide about 12,000 jobs in total with its expansion, but at what cost is the argument for a lot of people that are unhappy with what's due to happen if the government allows it to go through. I'm just wondering if there's a new innovative product that somebody in the Maldives could wear and I could just watch them be on holiday.
I mean,
don't
you'd
know,
be absolutely.
maybe
you'd be first to do it.
Maybe there's a headset out there that could do that. Guys, thank you very much for this. I think it's been really fascinating. I just want a final statement from everybody, if I can. Just going around the table. Are you optimistic about the future, Tammy, in terms of how we live our life, try and grow, but also think about the environment? Do you think people do care enough about it?
Yes, I do. I'm optimistic. You're seeing a younger generation now that are really getting involved in sustainability, really caring about more recycling clothes and how to recycle clothes and how to reuse clothes. It's great to see the younger generation are the future.
Do you think you'll still be stood on an ice cap that's there in the next 30 years, Jim?
Well, it's taken a long time to melt. It's a huge thing. But like Tammy said, it's the next generation are getting on board with it, and it doesn't take. There's a lot of influencers out there, and as they get on board, and second-hand clothes is cool at the moment. It's a cool thing. We have Veganuary, and then we have a meat-free Monday.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, they were talking about a school that had meat-free Monday, and now they have a meat-free Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Yeah.
And also, a plant-based diet, is much better for your health, because generally a lot of people eat far too much red meat anyway. So there's an impact on that, a health impact. So no, it's not all lost, but it's ours for the taking. We need to. It's incumbent on us to, step up and care. And as we move out of the pandemic, we have to jump straight onto the idea of dealing with climate, because that's the biggest danger to the planet, and how we move on with technology. Technology is going to be a big part of that. Working at home, that's a lot of people think working at home is fantastic for the climate, but then you're heating lots and lots of individual houses. And those, so there's a big story there, and how much technology people need to have at home, and all those sorts of things. So, but it's starting a lot of conversations, and finally to say, I think COVID has taught us that an MP, a politician famously said, we're sick of experts. Okay, but I think people now listen to the experts.
Yeah.
Who stand there either side of the politicians, because they really do. And that, it's the experts who got the information. They got the genome sequence from China, and they worked in Oxford. They worked over the weekend, and they designed the vaccine over the weekend, and then they started testing it. And it went through, and it was tested very quickly, just because they threw everything at it. Normally testing for drugs and things like that, it takes a long time, because it's just a stepwise. And they just said, right then, we're going to do all the tests. We're going to assume that these pass the test. So instead of it being in series, they did them in parallel, so that it rattled through the system. I've had AZ. That's the one, and I'm more than happy with that. I wasn't bothered about that. But I think people are now listening to the experts again. They're not sick of the experts, which is one. There's not many benefits come out of COVID, but maybe that's one of them. Now people are listening to the scientists, and we need to keep that momentum with the climate. And there's lots of organisations like Oxfam, and working, and Oxfam have scientists.
Well, we need scientists.
So
there is no question on earth that we need scientists, and perhaps now more than ever. Thank you so much. I will just leave you with this compelling argument of why we need to think about the future and green growth. A bottle of wine has an average CO2 footprint of 1.2 kilos per bottle, but using a natural cork rather than a screw top can reduce carbon emissions by a quarter because of the carbon sequestration of the cork tree. So we all drink more. It helps the earth. And it helps the world. Thank you very much to my guest, Dr. Jim McQuaid from the University of Leeds, Tammy Baxter from Oxfam, and Ben Wright from Simply Video in Leeds. And do join us next time on the podcast. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks very
you.
much.
Lovely stuff.